Hi, I'm Gary Heise, and today we're going to be looking at chrysanthemums painted in the Chinese brush painting manner, also referred to in Japanese as sumie. So we'll be looking at painting the flowers themselves, the petals, the leaves with veining, but also buds, full blossoms, and half-open blossoms. With Chinese brush painting, I always like to begin by referencing the Mustard Seed Garden Manual of Painting. That's the book that eventually was in 4 volumes, I believe. Originally published in 1679 in a woodblock printed edition. And then about 200 years later, 1887-88, a lithographed edition, known as the Shanghai edition, was put out. And generally in modern reproductions of that book, that's typically what you will see. And in this case, because it's lithographed, everything's just in black and white. But we know that in Chinese painting, there are a lot of tonalities to the ink and color, from very light to very dark. And the absolute black ink is really only used for a few highlights, for a few spots here and there. If everything's painted in pure black, it looks quite rigid and lifeless. So just bear that in mind when using this as a reference. However, for basic drawing and compositional ideas and a really wonderfully well thought out and organized book covering virtually every subject in Chinese painting, it's still, I think, the best initial resource to begin with. Okay. So we'll see the flower itself, and this is I would say, the most basic form of chrysanthemum when you look at it. 3 or so layers of petals going on, built up. There's more of a profile here with a flower not completely opened yet, very small buds that have just barely begun to open. And then the leaves. The leaves are another subject altogether. To get the notion of structure, I think it's a good idea to just copy the leaves from the book in the outline method, just drawing basically, so that you understand that typically there's 5 or 3 lobes to the leaf itself. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or just 1, and then 2 others on either side. And the veining is not symmetrical. They sort of alternate the veining, but we'll get into that in just a moment. What I like to do is paint so that we can see the bright flower, and that's in contrast to the dark leaves. So we're doing the flower in the outline method, the bone method, but the leaves themselves are in the boneless method without outlines, but drawing in the veins. And this will show you some of those ideas too. We'll get to that in a moment. First, let's look at the flower itself. Today I'm using just 3 brushes. Just a simple small wolf hair brush. Any brush that comes to a nice point will serve you for this. Don't go too small with the brush. If it's too delicate, you won't have enough strength of line vitality for what we need to do here. It's not detail work, but it is. But you do need to be able to come to a point for the line work. And then 2 sheep hair brushes. These originally were white. They're a bit stained now from use. Sheep hair is simply a very soft brush that we're going to be using for the leaves and applying some color. And as I mentioned, the wolf hair brush comes to a nice point, so we're using really just the point of that today for the outline of the leaves and the veining of the outline of the petals and the veining of the leaves. Okay. So if we depict the flower itself, once again, these are not shown in full frontal. In full frontal, it looks quite flat. So we want to tilt it at a little bit of an angle, which is a much more common view of any flower, so that we see the layers built up. But you're going to see toward the bottom or one side you're going to see more of the petals than you will on the opposite side, right? More here at the bottom, less on the other side. So we know that the flower is facing this direction. This flower is facing to the left, etc. All right, so how do you do that? I think the best way is to imagine some concentric circles. So your first layer of petals, your second layer of petals, your third layer of petals. And I'm going to do this in black ink just so you can see it. When you're actually painting the flower, I would recommend a dark to medium gray dilute ink, not pure black. Now, brush vitality. Petals are done in 2 strokes. 1, 2. They don't need to meet on the far side. The petal itself has a gentle crease down the middle, a little fold, and a little tip. So when we stop here, that's what we're suggesting. So it's 1, 2, 1, 2. And I find it easier to go from the inside to the out. If they don't meet, all the better. As we say, it lets in the chi. It gives a little movement to things. This is not a rigid subject matter. It has a life energy, a life force. It's moving, it's breathing, in a sense. And we want to depict that. Okay, 1, 2, left, right. After a while, a little muscle memory kicks in. Okay, leaves in front are longer. The petals, I'm sorry. Petals in front are longer than those in back because of the angle we're looking at. The next row of petals extend a little further. Keep in mind they're going back to the center, but underneath that first level. Maybe we see a few more in the back here. Okay. Next layer. Bear in mind we're working in the sumie style. Write the idea. This is not strict realism by any means. So I've exaggerated it, but that will give you the idea of the layers. You've got your first layer, your second layer, and your third layer. And that's how they build up. So again, first layer, second layer, third layer, which you may not see any of in the back. Okay. Stem starts underneath, comes down this way. Now, for a flower that's only half opened, what we've got are the base, the sepals, the little bit of the very tiny leaves that cradle the base of the flower itself, where it connects to the stem. And then the petals going off here. And it almost has 2 different halves to it, a left and a right half. And they initially start off diverging in different directions, but then toward the middle, they come back together again, toward the top. One's heading to the right, one's heading to the left, but in the middle, they come back to meet. In other words, these are the petals that have not fully opened yet. One's heading left, one's heading right. They're not going to be completely symmetrical. One side's going to be more open than the other side. But toward the center, they're coming back together again. So they sort of interweave a bit. Keep in mind, those petals are all heading back toward the center, toward the base. You might see the sepals in this case, very small. Stem. Very small buds when they first start to open up. Very similar. And they can actually, because they're so small, you have the sepal, right? Just the leaves at the base. And they're going to start from the outside coming in. Again, one side's going to be a little more open than the other. Same concept. And the bud itself. Buds and chrysanthemums tend to be rather short and squat, sort of like a Japanese pumpkin, the kabocha, if you've seen if you've seen those. All right. You see the petals. Right, so it's not tall, it's wide. Stems should have a nice strength to them. It's not a languid line. It's put some energy into it, so you show that structure and strength of that stem. Okay. Step 2. So when we're looking at the petals, actually the veining on this I don't love. I'm going to show you a little bit different. I think this can be a little confusing initially when you see the veining. The veining should come over the top, generally speaking, but here they're showing a little different attitude to the flower, to the leaf itself, but that's okay for our purposes. So, so if we're drawing the leaf itself, right? It's a very absorbent paper. Okay, general idea. Okay. Pure black for the veins in this case. Now you want to overemphasize the veins because the veining really helps to give a sense of structure and shape to that leaf. So it's going to really arc in. And then toward each lobe, same thing. Arc. And then at the very base, 2 more veins. But give them shape. Make sure they have a nice shape to them. Right? So again, if the veining, just the veining itself will come across. Got it? Okay. Now, your leaves can go in any directions. Just study, my recommendation is study the plant. Some areas on the stem, the older leaves are going to be a little bit bigger. Younger leaves are going to be smaller, right? Makes sense. So maybe directly beneath a bud is where you're going to have small leaves, and then bigger leaves toward the bottom. Okay. So using a basic sheep hair brush for the leaves, so I'm just doing them in a dilute ink right now so you can see them. I think sometimes it's easier to do the leaves before you do the stem, because the leaves are frequently going to obscure quite a bit of that stem. Now, let's see. So I'm using a dilute gray for the leaves, but I don't want them to be all the same tone. So I'm just touching the very, very tip to a little bit of black and working that into the tip. That way when I paint, I have a little different tonality going on. So it goes from a dark ink to a lighter ink. And actually in this, because I'm working on a xuan paper, it's quite absorbent. Let that work with you. So you have these nice crisp petals and a rather wet, dark leaf going on. And we'll do that in color in just a moment. So to slow that down, I think a good basic approach for general structure is, so as we saw, your leaves can be 2 or 3 lobes to them. So basic would be, and use the brush at an angle as opposed to coming down with the point. When we're doing bamboo, it's point up and down, but now we're holding the brush really obliquely and drawing with that side of the brush. Right, front, sides. Okay. Because we want to show the leaf curving in space, right? It's curving in space. We don't see the base where that leaf attaches to the stem here. It's curving over. So that's the idea. Right. This one's a little hard to see. Just do 3 lobes. 1. Because we're looking at the angle of the leaf coming toward us, those sides are going to be a little higher up. And make sure that they point off in different directions. So this is coming out this way. This is going this way. This is going this way. Vein, arching over the top. Okay. The fun thing about doing the leaves is if they're a bit raggedy, it's perfectly fine. You know, these are plants that exist outdoors in all sorts of weather. So, you know, not every leaf is going to be perfect. And those veining really helps to pull together the structure of the leaf itself. So when you're, you know, if you've got a leaf that's pointing up like this or one that's pointing down, if it's a little raggedy, it's actually rather nice at times for a bit of variety. But then to do the veining in a nice clean manner to pull it all together. Sometimes that makes a little more sense when it's in color. But you know, depending on the artist, you know, some painters put very little attention to the leaves themselves because, frankly, you don't really see a lot of the leaf, and it's not our main subject matter. The leaves are there as a way to kind of highlight the flowers, I guess you could say. You know, so practice them with some care when you start off. As time goes on, you know, you can be a little freer with them. You know, as long as your veining's in place, it will really help to pull them together. Okay. As I said, this is the sumie, write the idea, school of painting. Sometimes that translates simply as freehand painting, as opposed to meticulous, detailed drawing. The main focus here is the vitality of the brushwork. And that doesn't mean speed. It just means that the brush has a voice and you let it speak. You know, and the way it interacts with the paper. A bit of bleeding, again, the ink and the paper also have a voice. You're working with them. You're not trying to subdue them. In fact, you want to encourage their involvement in a sense. So, you know, they have so much to offer, these beautiful aesthetic qualities of ink on just xuan paper. That you get these wonderful combinations of dry ink against a wet, dark ink. You know, that alone has a certain beauty to it. So we want to encourage that aesthetic. Okay, we're going to actually do a version with some color. Whatever color you like is fine. Just do a little research, find out which chrysanthemums you like. I'm doing something that's sort of an orange and yellow combination here. I want to clean off that wolf hair brush. So I'm going to be doing the outline in color. So I want a nice strong color that I can work with. And I've combined Cinnabar number 398 with Rouge number 400, as in Marie's Chinese watercolors. But you can do whatever you like, you know, whatever color combination. I mean, there's purple chrysanthemums, yellow chrysanthemums, etc. If you do a very pale chrysanthemum, you definitely need an outline, either black or dark gray, or you can do it in color. Whatever color you're doing your chrysanthemum, you can do the darkest version of that color as the outline. That's a nice approach. So let's see. Okay, you'll notice when I'm doing the different layers of petals, I'm not just simply putting the petals evenly spaced between the openings of those previous ones. You kind of set up your own rhythm, so that way it doesn't look too formulaic. Okay, let's start there. We'll do one there. Maybe we'll have another. Another one opening up on the side. And maybe a couple butts. Just starting to open up. Okay, for leaves, standard green in Chinese painting is indigo, $4.95, or cyan, however you want to call it. But there's with a lot of the, $4.51 is perfectly fine too. That's kind of a phthalo blue in this case. And then the standard yellow, $2.18, plenty of that. Chrysanthemum leaves tend to be rather bluish. So we're going to add a number 3 green, which is a little opaque, which is nice in this case. And I'm actually mixing it with a little bit of my gray ink, just to tone it down a little bit. I don't want to mix too much at once. This is not a spring green, so it's not a very yellow green. It's a little dark. Okay. Now before I paint, I'm going to just touch it to a little bit of black and then work that in just on the tip. That way I've got some tonality going on in my leaf itself. Okay. Green, touch of black. Okay. Maybe a little yellower for the new leaves. Okay. Now your veining can be done in a contrast color. Maybe because these are dark, you can do them in a very light, in that number 3 green, which is $5.93. We're going to do them just in pure black. I want to make sure you're able to see them. Now for the base, you can add rocks. Sometimes it's nice and easy just to add a touch of just a few dots to give it a base, something for it to sit on. That's all. But you can do autumn grasses, you can, you know, fill it out with whatever you want. But I just want to give you an idea how to approach this for today. Okay, now for the flowers themselves, we're not going to leave them just with an outline. We want to add a little bit of color. So I've got the orange again and yellow. And we want to do this as a nice transparent tone. And quite wet. So I've got some yellow I'm mixing onto a smaller sheep hair brush. Make sure that's well mixed. You don't want streaks. Touching it to the bit of orange. I'm going to work that into the tip. Okay, so we're going to do the orange at the tip, and we're going to put those on the tips of the petals themselves. So now I have orange and then into a transparent yellow. And it's not really a stroke. I'm just laying down the brush with a slight pull. Pull, 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 pull. But the brush is just laying on the paper there. Pull, pull, pull. Add a little more orange. Pull, 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 pull. Leave a little white. Pull, pull. And this is not coloring in the line, so again, that's perfectly fine. You can leave some spaces, leave some blanks. Don't be too neat about this. We want to show a sense of movement that's going on here. Okay. Repeat that. Okay. And you know what? Let's put a little bit of green in the center of that open flower. So I'm mixing just a little bit of green off to the side, quite transparent. There we go.